The gospel reading today is from Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 through 20. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not take a road leading to Gentiles, and do not enter a Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, or two tunics or sandals or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them and the Gentiles. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you at that time. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Was this today? You probably all know this, but just as it. Oh, okay. I would hike the Camino de Santiago, and that, as you may know, is the Way of St. James. It started in the 9th century. The remains of St. James were discovered and moved a couple of times. The Pope thought a pilgrimage would be a good thing to do, and so eventually they built the cathedral. And since then, except for COVID, hundreds of thousands of people a year make that journey. So the way that I got started was my son-in-law saw the Martin Sheen movie, The Way, and was taken by that and asked me if I would do the hike with him. And at the time I was working, and it seemed like a long way. And but I said, yeah, but if we're going to do it, let's do it, because I'm not getting any younger. And so time passed, and I sort of became emotionally committed to this as I saw his interest, maybe not declining, but they had some difficulty with the young lady that they adopted, and there was a job change, and I just had the feeling that he might not go. And because of that, Kathy and I were having coffee one morning, and I thought, I'm going to ask my brother. I'm going to call him and ask if he would like to go. So I did call him, we were talking, and I said, would you consider hiking the Camino de Santiago with me? And he was recently retired. And I loved the answer. He said, yeah. What is it? But so he's pretty much up for anything. And we were texting back and forth. Our youngest brother, Tom, saw some of those texts and said, could I go? And we hadn't really considered him because he was still working, but he was able to arrange enough time off that the three of us went. So because it's a pilgrimage, I think when I was doing it and even after I returned, people would ask, well, what did you learn? And embarrassingly, not very much. What I did do was I was reminded of things that I already knew and that you all know. And chief among those is the importance of family. And I have to say, I think this will illustrate, our first full day of walking, we started in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France, and right away you start over the Pyrenees. It was hot. We were pushing too hard. Our pace was too fast. My brother Rob really needs a lot of water, and he wasn't drinking enough water. And there came a point where he was very ill. And Tom, our youngest brother, recognized that and went on ahead and arranged for a taxi. And had he not, there was a lot of distance and a lot of hills remaining that day. Had he not done that, I'm not sure what we would have done. So he kind of saved the day there. And Rob felt bad that he said, well, I don't want to cheat us out of these miles. And believe me, we made him up. But in any event, so that was the very beginning. And right about the middle, 300 miles in, Tom, who has had a bad hip for a long time, and his gait was just limping. He was just dragging his leg along. And at some point he said, guys, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't know what we were going to do. We don't really know the area. We don't really speak the language. And it turned out that I think we had him on a train back to Madrid in an hour. And we just it just worked out. But then Tom had been the organizer of all of this. And, we were sort of following along and trusting him in the sense that he knew what he was doing. Well, all of a sudden he's not there. And he also is the one who spoke Spanish best. I'm not going to say he was fluent, but he was doing the communication. So then it fell to me. And I can ask for a beer, and where's the restroom? And you don't want the first without the second. So it turned out that, a hidden gift, I'm fluent in charades. So anyway, we got along. We made it. So that was really what happened in the middle. At the very end, we were in Finisterre, which is the westernmost, it's on the coast, and waiting for our bus to go back to Santiago, which would then get a train back to Madrid, and having lunch and pork. Not a good idea. I apparently got a bad piece of pork, and I was so sick. It's the sickest I can ever remember being. And by then, Tom had left us by then, and without Rob, I don't know what I would have done. So a little embarrassing, but he really took care of me. So there was kind of beginning, middle, and end, helping each other. We ran into lots of hikers who did it solo. God bless them. It's not something I would want to do. But so that was a good lesson. Another lesson was, you go, one of the purposes or the joys of this is meeting people. And one night, Rob and I were in the albergue, the Pilgrim's Hostel, having dinner, and a woman walked by and said, oh, can I join you? And of course, that's kind of why you're there. So she did. And one of the first things that everybody asks is, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from McMinnville, Oregon. Oh, really? I know somebody there. Okay. Do you know Alan Werner? And I thought it's a good lesson in behave yourself wherever you are. You don't know who's watching. Another thing I was reminded of is that most people are kind. We had a situation early on when we had you have a list of the albergues where, places to stay. And there was a town that had 2, and we thought, well, we can find, out of the 2, we can find something. Well, we got there, and it turned out that one was closed for renovation and the other was full. And I thought, and I mean, you've walked all day. So we thought, what are we going to do? We engaged a fellow randomly that we found, and he spent quite some time with us, got us on a bus to Pamplona, and then he just picked somebody out of the crowd on the bus and said, I think he said, my Spanish is not so good, but I think he said, these knuckleheads don't know what they're doing. Would you make sure that they get off at the right stop? So she did. We got there, and she got us off the bus. So we missed 2 places. In Pamplona, turns out that there was a festival, and we checked 10 places, hotels and albergues and so on, and we couldn't find a room. But there was a couple who walked us around the city for hours looking for something. And it made me think that we have self-worth. I mean, you think, well, I'm a worthy person. But in this situation, I didn't know the language. They're all dressed better. And it kind of makes you think, or made me think, when you have the opportunity to encounter somebody here who maybe doesn't speak the language or isn't, sharp dresser like we all are, it made me want to help them. So that was something. The other thing that I was reminded of is there's a phrase, walk your own camino. And what it means in that context is set your own pace and don't worry about what other people do. Just, do what's comfortable for you. But I think you can expand on that. And again, we all know this, but don't worry about what your neighbor, their salary, or how nice their lawn looks. Just, I think if you do what is innate, what makes you happy, then that's really, be comfortable with that. I guess that would be the thing there. So I don't know, is that the first one? So, and I was just, it's hard to pick which representative photographs, but there were so many, we told each other, would joke about, the pictures we took were cathedrals and landscape, because that's what there is. So, and that's, I guess, representative of something, or some part of it, but it's so varied. People would ask me, well, what's a typical albergue, which is the Pilgrim Hospital? And there is no typical. They're all different. We stayed at places with as few as 7 beds and as many as 250. And there's some commonality. They're all about 12 euros. Almost all of them offer some kind of a meal at about 12 euros. But within that, every once in a while we had our own room. But very often it was dormitory, and very often it was co-ed. And so that was kind of a new thing to me. European people are much more comfortable with some of that than I was. And I should look at my notes. Hey, yeah. Well, we will see eventually here. There's a lady in a red jacket or a coat. Yeah, sure. That's Noelle, and we ran across. Oh, this lady's name is Noelle. She's from the Netherlands, and I wrote this down because I wanted to remember the distances. In 2005, she walked from Amsterdam to Assisi, Italy. In 2010, and that's 960 miles. In 2010, she walked from Amsterdam to Rome. That's 1,024 miles. And when we met her in 2022, she walked 800 miles from Amsterdam to Saint Jean so that she could walk 600 miles. to Finisterre. And it's just, to me, she was like the epitome of people we ran into who have done multiple Caminos. We met a young lady. I didn't see her brother, but her brother was with her. And their father had passed away the year before. And their plan was to enter Santiago on his birthday. And so that it was like a tribute to him. And we met artists who said that they get inspiration from the Camino. We talked to several people who said they find peace on the Camino. I guess it's, again, it's a long walk. You can be by yourself if you choose to be, and so it's a reflective time. For the number of people who do it, and I think when we were there, 350,000 people had gotten a Compostela, which is the certificate of completion, and you would think, you'd be shoulder to shoulder. But there are times, hours, that we didn't see anybody. So, and we had a concern that you would get to an albergue and it would be too full to get a room. That, except for Pamplona, was never the case. But, I was going to say, another thing I was reminded of is that we see ourselves differently than other people see us. And an example of that was at the end of a day, we could actually see the town, and we're coming up to that, and really ready for sitting down. And a young couple was coming up behind us, and of course they were walking faster, and I thought, we have a reservation, but I'm never sure if something's going to happen, and they give it away, and so they're just faster than us. And they got alongside and looked over, and the young lady said to me, "Sir, are you all right?" And I thought, what do I look like that she asked that? And when did I become a sir? 2 weeks ago, I was in high school. So that's, can you go to the one with the statue things? That's Alto de Perdón, which is the Hill of Forgiveness. And I said we went to, when we were in Pamplona, we couldn't find us a spot. And some help or some luck that we had is that a fella called ahead to Puente de la Reina, which is a town farther on, and got us a room. Well, it's 22 miles. So we got a taxi, we went there, spent the night, and then took a taxi back because we didn't want to cheat. We didn't want to, and this is in between. So we left Pamplona, you climb and climb and climb, and went to this hill, which we wanted to rename as something else than the Hill of Forgiveness. But in any event, the idea was if a pilgrim made it that far, they were still forgiven. So there's a lot of these, penance or indulgence, whatever they're called. They're these milestones that if you make it, then you're forgiven. And so we should be forgiven. I think it was such a great experience, and the farther I am from it, the better it was. In the moment, and I said this, in the moment, that's the castle of the Knights Templar in Ponferrado. When we walked into town here, it just poured rain, and my phone didn't work. I didn't have the correct app or SIM card. Luckily, my brothers did, and he had a map program. Unfortunately, we took the long way around. We walked an extra mile. The place that we wanted to stay was a few blocks from this, but we walked all the way around and back again. But it was so impressive. It's a castle, obviously, but it encloses some grounds, and within those grounds, was a whole city. So they raised crops, they raised animals. There's a secret passage out of the castle down to the river, so they had a fresh supply of water. And just, I think one of the things that sunk in after a while was the difference in the ages of that country and this country. I mean, you know, what, 250 years here is like nothing. So, and the scope of these projects, particularly the cathedrals, are multi-generational. And the example that I was given was if a fella was a wood carver and was making a door, that might be his career. That was his life. And as his son came up, he would teach his son to finish it. And so, you know, just to go on and on. But yeah. And
So, are there any questions?
questions, yeah.
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you know, it's interesting that there are many trails. I think there's probably 4 or 5 official trails. The Camino Frances is what we did. That's the most popular. And but there's one up from Portugal. There's one across the top of Spain, more north than we were. So yeah, there's many. And interestingly, I think in 2010, UNESCO designated the Camino at large as a historical, it's not a landmark, and it's not a site, but they recognized it. And so there was some money went into that. And for the distance that you walk, it's surprisingly well marked. We got off track a couple of times, but by and large, you know, you can see the next marker. Or if you can't see the next marker, it's because you can't turn. So you walk along till you see the next marker. Yes, ma'am.
How many pairs of shoes?
You know, it's interesting. We both trained.
How many pairs of shoes did it require is the question.
Yeah, how many pairs of shoes? The pair that I used for training was good, but did show some wear, so I bought another pair, and I still have them. They were Hoka's, and little plug here. They were just the best. I wouldn't get anything else.
Linda, did you? Jim?
So when are you going again?
When are you going again?
You know, it's interesting. We joked about when we were there, the people would ask about that. And our answer was, it was an interesting experience. But again, the farther we are from it, the neater it is. And having never been pregnant, I wonder if there isn't you forget the bad parts and remember the good stuff. So that's not an answer. The thing, Jim, is there's so many other things to do in our lives, other hikes that you guys mentioned, the Scotland hike, and I don't know. I talked to my brother Rob the other day, and he said in different circumstances he'd go in a heartbeat, and he's the one who said he would never go again. But I think the different circumstances were we were gone quite some time, and it's hard to be away from your family that long. But it was neat.
On this side? Another one over here. Rick?
Yeah, Rick.
What caused them to believe they found the remains of St. James?
So what caused them to believe they found the remains of St. James? My understanding is St. James was beheaded, and I think that they found a body, a corpse that was beheaded. I honestly, this is crass, but I think that claiming that it was St. James wasn't bad for commerce. I don't know.
There's probably a Wikipedia article about it. That you can
Yeah.
probably.
Interestingly, at the cathedral, I think maybe sepulcher is the wrong word, but it's downstairs, and it was really neat. People go for different reasons, you know, curiosity or a challenge or whatever, but some people, you know, it's really a profound religious experience. And we saw people, you wait your turn, kneeling at the entrance to the sepulcher. And for them, it was St. James. I don't know. I can tell you that the cathedrals were astounding to the point that I knew that I didn't know. I knew that what I was looking at was so magnificent and it was hard to take in. And that's Burgos and Leon and then Santiago. And they're just, as I've said, there were ornaments on the ornaments. The other thing about churches or cathedrals, there was such a fundamental part of life that little villages, 100 people, had a pretty big church. I don't know who went to these things, but well, and
The whole city.
the cost, the whole. I mean, the whole city wouldn't take up a couple of rows of pews.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah,
So I have a question.
yeah.
2 questions. This morning in the readings, we had Abraham welcome visitors, and he says, "Let me get you a little water." And he comes back with cake and milk.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other reading, Jesus says, when you get arrested and everything's going terrible, don't trust yourself, just trust the Spirit. So did you have the offer of small hospitalities and then receive something amazing from someone? And are there times where you just had to trust the Spirit?
Well, both. In fact, there is a phrase that the Camino will provide, and we would joke about that. Oh yeah, but we were always okay, and partly because of that. There was a time that we didn't have a room, the phones didn't work, and we were really pretty concerned about that. And a young lady came up, and we could communicate enough to convey that, and she got us a room. And so, and we wound up at an albergue one time. Again, you have to sort of disconnect yourself. You know, we don't really know. We don't really know the language. We don't really know where we're at or what to do. And people comping a meal or something. So, and there's a spirit of giving. So I don't really need my rain jacket, but you do. So let's, you can have things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, so he's in line. It's interesting. He's in line for his right hip, and it turns out that his left is just about as old. So, he's in the next couple of years he'll get 2. I think he's going to get 1 in August. And I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he walked that far.
Glenda had another. And how long?
7 weeks, 600 miles. My pedometer is inaccurate. It says like 735, but which, when you look at a map, it couldn't be that. I think that the way that the pedometer works is it measures steps, and then there's probably a calculation. Well, the average step is this far. I think the miles are off because the trail is in places so rough and so steep that you take a lot of little steps rather than big ones. So I think that's why it's off. But interestingly, I had thought 600 miles. The official distance from Saint Jean to Finisterre is 577 miles. But you're anything you do, you're walking. You walk to the store, you get lost, whatever. So I was pretty comfortable with 600. And then I've been in communication with the fellow we met who did that, and he's much more scientific than we are, and his was 601. So seriously, I think it was a confirmation that my guess was pretty close.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Steve, so
Thank you.
much.